This story is titled, My Brother Slept with My Fiancée for 6 months. My family told me to get over it, so I disappeared and built a life they'll never be part of, and now they want back. What is going on, everybody? It's Fyra. Today we have a one-story video with an original post plus 3 updates. Full story, full closure, we know everything. If you want to skip between the different parts, just use the timestamps right below. Now this one, I'll just say it up front. This is the kind of story where the guy does everything right for everybody else his entire life and gets absolutely nothing in return, until he stops. And what he builds after that is what makes this story worth watching. Hit subscribe and let's get into it. I, 28M, don't even know how to type this out. I've been with my fiancée Rachel, 27F, for 4 years. Engaged for 8 months. Wedding was 3 months out when everything went down. Invitations already sent. Venue locked in. Honeymoon planned. Her dress was hanging in our closet. I had my vows saved in my phone. Used to practice them in the shower like an idiot. She was supposed to be the person I was building everything around. Then there's my little brother Kyle, 26 months. Our dad bounced when we were kids and I basically stepped up and helped raise him. Took on way more than any kid should have to at that age. But that's what you do when you're the oldest and your family needs you. Mom worked 2 jobs. I did the grocery runs when I was 15. Made sure Kyle had clean clothes for school. Helped him with homework even when I had my own to finish. I was basically a second parent before I was old enough to drive. And Kyle just kinda got used to it. Got used to someone always being there to catch him. I paid for his college when Mom couldn't afford it. Not alone, just paid it. He dropped out after 3 semesters, and nobody said a word about the money. I didn't either, because that's what I did. Just absorbed it and moved on. Let him crash at my place for 6 months rent-free last year when he lost his job. Bought his groceries, drove him to job interviews. Covered his phone bill until he got back on his feet. Even helped him rewrite his resume because the one he had looked like he typed it on his phone in 5 minutes. Which he probably did. When he finally landed something, I was the first person he called. And I was genuinely happy for him. I made him my best man. That's how much I trusted this kid. So a few weeks ago, I came home early from work. Had a meeting cancel last minute. And I figured I'd surprise Rachel with flowers. Stopped at the grocery store on the way home. Grabbed a bouquet of sunflowers because those were her favorite. I was in a good mood. Had the radio on, windows down, thinking about the wedding, thinking about how we were almost there. 3 months out. Walked through the front door, set my keys on the counter like I always do, headed toward the bedroom because I could hear something, and found Kyle in bed with her. My bed, my house, my brother. The flowers hit the floor, and these two started scrambling around like roaches when the lights come on. I knew immediately this wasn't the first time. You don't move that in sync after one slip up. This had been going on. Rachel tried to say something. I just held my hand up, turned around, walked out, got in my car, and drove. No idea where. Didn't care. Just drove until I couldn't think straight anymore, and pulled into some random parking lot and sat there, while my whole life fell apart in my head. I remember staring at my hands on the steering wheel, and they were shaking. Not from anger, from shock. Like my body figured out what happened before my brain did. 4 years with this woman. Everything I'd built. Gone in the time it took to open a bedroom door. The sunflowers were still on the bedroom floor. I remember thinking about that for some reason. How they were just sitting there on the carpet in their plastic wrapper, while my life ended. Within an hour, my phone was blowing up. Rachel, Kyle, Mom, all on rotation like they were taking shifts. I put it on silent and just watched the notifications stack up like it was happening to someone else. Eventually, I checked into the cheapest hotel I could find off the highway. One of those places where the ice machine in the hallway doesn't work. And the carpet looks like it hasn't been replaced since the 90s. Sat on a bed that smelled like cleaning chemicals and stared at a wall. Didn't sleep, didn't eat. Just sat there running through every conversation I'd had with Rachel in the last 6 months, trying to figure out what I missed. There was this water stain on the ceiling shaped like a boot, and I stared at it for so long I can still see it when I close my eyes. I kept picking up my phone to call someone, and then realizing there was nobody to call. The people I would have called about something like this were the people who did it. Then I got a text from Mom that said, "Grant, please come home. We need to talk about this as a family." As a family. Like my brother didn't just nuke my entire life. 2 days later, there was a family meeting at Mom's house. I showed up because she begged me to. Because I still believed in these people. I thought blood actually meant something. Everyone was already there when I walked in. Mom, Kyle, Rachel, my Aunt Linda, my Uncle Robert, my older sister Michelle. All of them sitting in the living room like this was some kind of intervention. For me. Not for the guy who'd been sleeping with my fiancée. For me. The one who got cheated on. There was a plate of cookies on the coffee table like this was a normal family get-together. Cookies. I remember staring at those cookies thinking my mom made snacks for this. Mom told me to sit down in that gentle voice people use when they think you're being unreasonable. I stayed standing. Asked why Rachel was there. Mom said because we need to discuss this like adults. I said there's nothing to discuss. I caught them in my bed. That's not a discussion. That's a verdict. Kyle started up with the red eyes and the apology tour. Said he never meant for it to happen. It just happened. He was sitting in my dad's old chair, the brown one in the corner that nobody ever sits in, hunched forward with his elbows on his knees, doing that thing he's done since we were kids, where he rubs his hands together when he's nervous. I asked how long. Rachel tried to dodge it, looked at the floor and said it wasn't that simple. I asked again. 6 months. 6 months. Half a year. While I was working overtime to pay for the honeymoon she wanted. While I was making her coffee every morning and texting her love you on my lunch breaks like a loyal idiot. While I was planning a whole future around this woman. While I was sitting at my desk at work looking at venue photos and reception playlists and seating charts. 6 months of lies straight to my face. Every morning she'd kiss me goodbye. And then what? Wait for me to pull out of the driveway? Every night I'd come home exhausted and she'd ask about my day. And I'd tell her everything. And she'd nod and smile, and the whole time she was hiding this. And I never suspected a thing, because why would I? These were the two people I trusted most on this planet. I think about the timeline sometimes, and it makes me sick. 6 months means it started while Kyle was still living with us, while I was paying for his food and his car insurance and driving him to interviews. I was literally funding his life while he was sleeping with my fiancée in the next room. Every dinner, the three of us ate together at that kitchen table. He knew. She knew. I was the only one who didn't. Then Rachel hit me with the "we're in love" line, actual tears in her eyes like she was the victim. Said they tried to fight it, but you can't help who you fall for. My Aunt Linda told me not to be crude when I responded to that. My aunt, telling me not to be crude, said this was hard for everyone. My mom put her hand on my arm and said, Kyle is your brother. Family forgives. Then said maybe it was better this happened before the wedding, like she was doing me a favor. My sister Michelle called me dramatic, said Kyle and Rachel felt terrible and didn't want to hurt me. They didn't want to hurt me. They just did it for 6 months straight and hoped I'd never find out. And then my mom snapped at me about my language. Not at Kyle. Not at Rachel. At me. For how I was talking. While her other son sat right there. My language was the problem in that room. Not the betrayal. Not the 6 months. My language. That's when everything went calm. Dead calm. I looked around the room and told them, let me get this straight. Kyle sleeps with my fiancé for 6 months in my house. In my bed. And I'm the one who needs to calm down. Mom said he's your brother. I said not anymore. Room went dead silent. I looked at Kyle and told him he was dead to me. Told Rachel she could keep the ring. Consider it payment for the 4 years I wasted. Then I looked at my mother and told her she chose him. That's fine. But choices have consequences. Don't call me. Don't text me. Don't show up at my door. We're done. I walked out. Nobody followed. Nobody chased after me. Nobody said a single thing. They just sat there. I got in my car and sat in the driveway for a while. Through the living room window, I could see them all still sitting there. Mom was the first to move. She got up and went to Kyle and put her arm around him. I watched my mother comfort the son who just destroyed my life. That's the last image I have of my family. My mom holding Kyle while I sat alone in the driveway. They made their choice. I made mine. I'll update when there's more to tell. Well, Grant, you walked into that room expecting support. And what you got was an intervention for being upset that your brother slept with your fiancé for 6 months. Your aunt told you not to be crude. Your mom corrected your language. Your sister called you dramatic. Not one person in that room said what Kyle did was wrong. And you still walked out without screaming or begging? That's not dramatic. That's a man who saw exactly where he stood. Let's move on to the first update. Update 1. So I went back to the house after a couple days. Rachel's clothes were already gone. Some of my stuff, too. She'd been efficient about it. Probably had an exit strategy the whole time. Leave me. Move in with Kyle. Play the "we fell in love" card so she didn't look like the villain. She had this whole thing mapped out. I was the only one who didn't know. I called a real estate agent that same night and put the house on the market. Couldn't stay there. Couldn't walk into the bedroom without seeing them. Every corner of that house had something that reminded me of her or him or both. The bathroom still had her shampoo in the shower. The kitchen had a magnet on the fridge from a trip we took together. There was a sticky note on the mirror in the hallway that said, I love you, have a good day, in her handwriting from like 2 months ago that I'd just never taken down. I took it down that night, held it for a second, then threw it in the trash. Needed out. Then I called my boss the next morning about a transfer we'd talked about months ago. Different state. Rachel had begged me not to take it because it was too far from family. Funny how that works out. He said I could start in 2 weeks. 2 weeks to take apart an entire life. I packed in garbage bags mostly because I didn't have boxes. Just shoved everything into black bags and loaded up my car. The whole time the calls kept coming. Mom, Michelle, Aunt Linda, all begging me to reconsider, to forgive, to be the bigger person. Not one of those calls included an apology. Not one. Just guilt trips and family is family on repeat. My aunt left a voicemail where she literally said, "You're tearing this family apart." Me. I'm tearing it apart. Not Kyle, not Rachel. Me. For being upset. I blocked every single one of them. Kyle showed up at my house 3 days before I left, banging on the door, calling my name through the wood, saying he was sorry over and over like repetition would make it mean something. I watched him through the window standing on the porch I rebuilt last summer. The same porch he helped me stain one weekend when things were still normal. We'd ordered pizza that day, sat out there in old clothes with the stain drying on the rails while we ate straight from the box. He'd been practicing his best man toast and kept messing up the same line, and we were both cracking up about it. Normal brother stuff. The kind of afternoon you don't think twice about until you can't have it anymore. And now here he was, standing on that same porch, begging me to let him in. I let him stand there until he ran out of things to say. At one point, he just sat down on the steps with his head in his hands and stayed there for a while. Then he got up and left. I closed the blinds and went back to packing. Moving day, I loaded the last bag into my car. The house was empty except for the furniture I'd sold with it. Stood in the kitchen for a minute. This was where I proposed to Rachel, right there by the counter. I'd made this whole dinner, burned the chicken, had to order a backup from a restaurant down the street, and played it like I made it myself. She knew. She laughed about it. Said yes anyway. That memory used to make me smile. Now it just made me feel stupid. I took one last look, locked the door, left the key under the mat for the real estate agent, got in my car, and drove. Didn't look back. Whatever life I'd had there, that was a different person. First night in the new city, I sat on the floor because I didn't even have furniture yet. Just a sleeping bag, a suitcase, and cold takeout from a teriyaki spot down the block that I ate because I hadn't figured out where anything was yet. The apartment was empty, like completely empty. My voice echoed off the walls when I talked on the phone. I remember the fridge was making this weird humming sound that was so loud in the silence it almost felt like company. Sat there watching the lights through the window thinking this is what it feels like when nobody needs anything from you. Just quiet. Real quiet. The kind where your phone doesn't buzz every 20 minutes and nobody's crying and nobody... I walked out. Nobody followed. Nobody chased after me. Nobody said a single thing. They just sat there. I got in my car and sat in the driveway for a while. Through the living room window, I could see them all still sitting there. Mom was the first to move. She got up and went to Kyle and put her arm around him. I watched my mother comfort the son who just destroyed my life. That's the last image I have of my family. My mom holding Kyle while I sat alone in the driveway. They made their choice. I made mine. I'll update when there's more to tell. Well, Grant, you walked into that room expecting support, and what you got was an intervention for being upset that your brother slept with your fiancée for 6 months. Your aunt told you not to be crude. Your mom corrected your language. Your sister called you dramatic. Not one person in that room said what Kyle did was wrong. And you still walked out without screaming or begging? That's not dramatic. That's a man who saw exactly where he stood. Let's move on to the first update. Update 1. So I went back to the house after a couple days. Rachel's clothes were already gone. Some of my stuff, too. She'd been efficient about it. Probably had an exit strategy the whole time. Leave me. Move in with Kyle. Play the "we fell in love" card so she didn't look like the villain. She had this whole thing mapped out. I was the only one who didn't know. I called a real estate agent that same night and put the house on the market. Couldn't stay there. Couldn't walk into the bedroom without seeing them. Every corner of that house had something that reminded me of her or him or both. The bathroom still had her shampoo in the shower. The kitchen had a magnet on the fridge from a trip we took together. There was a sticky note on the mirror in the hallway that said, "I love you. Have a good day," in her handwriting from like 2 months ago that I'd just never taken down. I took it down that night, held it for a second, then threw it in the trash. Needed out. Then I called my boss the next morning about a transfer we'd talked about months ago. Different state. Rachel had begged me not to take it because it was too far from family. Funny how that works out. He said I could start in 2 weeks. 2 weeks to take apart an entire life. I packed in garbage bags mostly because I didn't have boxes. Just shoved everything into black bags and loaded up my car. The whole time the calls kept coming. Mom, Michelle, Aunt Linda, all begging me to reconsider, to forgive, to be the bigger person. Not one of those calls included an apology. Not one. Just guilt trips and family is family on repeat. My aunt left a voicemail where she literally said, "You're tearing this family apart." Me. I'm tearing it apart. Not Kyle, not Rachel. Me. For being upset. I blocked every single one of them. Kyle showed up at my house 3 days before I left, banging on the door, calling my name through the wood, saying he was sorry over and over like repetition would make it mean something. I watched him through the window, started dating eventually. Nothing serious at first. Wasn't ready. But it felt good to be around somebody who wasn't actively betraying me behind my back. Low bar, I know. Went on a few dates that went nowhere. One girl talked about her ex for 45 minutes straight. Another one spent the whole dinner on her phone. I wasn't really putting myself out there, honestly. More just going through the motions to prove I could. Then I met Audrey. She was a 4th-grade teacher. Funny. Had this laugh that made everybody around her smile whether they wanted to or not. Met her at a friend's cookout. She was wearing this ridiculous sun hat that was way too big, and she kept pushing it out of her eyes. I said something dumb about the hat, and she goes, "This hat has been to 4 countries, and it's never let me down." And I just thought, okay, I like this person. We hit it off. No games, no performance, no walking on eggshells. Our first date was at this little Vietnamese place, where the whole menu was in Vietnamese, and neither of us could read a word of it, so we just pointed at random stuff and agreed to eat whatever showed up. Half of it was amazing. The other half, I still don't know what one of the dishes was. She ate it anyway and just said, "Adventure." About 6 months in, she asked about my family. I told her everything. She looked at me like I just told her the sky was green. "So they chose your brother and his mistress over you?" "Yep. And they think you need to apologize?" "I guess I'm being dramatic." She took my hand and said, "Grant, that's not family. That's people using you. You did the right thing getting out." Nobody had ever put it that plainly. For the first time since everything happened, I actually believed I'd done the right thing. The texts from my old life trickled in for months after. Different numbers, friends of friends. Distant relatives I'd talked to maybe twice in the last 5 years, who suddenly had opinions. All the same script. "Your family misses you. Haven't you punished them enough? Life is too short. You only get one family." One cousin I barely knew sent me a 3-paragraph message about forgiveness that read like she copied it off a greeting card. Not one of those messages said what happened to you was wrong. Not one. Nobody said Kyle shouldn't have done what he did. Nobody said the family should have had my back. Just a bunch of people who wanted me to make it easier for everyone else by pretending I was fine. Then one from Mom's number saying Kyle and Rachel broke up, and he was really struggling and needed his brother. They broke up. 6 months of destroying my life, and they couldn't even last a year together. That's what they burned it all down for. A relationship that didn't even survive 4 seasons. Blocked that number too. Kyle and Rachel couldn't even last a year. Their whole thing was built on sneaking around. Once Grant was gone and there was nobody left to hide from, they had nothing. And every message from the family followed the same script. "Haven't you punished them enough?" Not one apology. They didn't miss Grant. They missed what he did for them. Now let's move on to update 2. Update 2. So then my Uncle Robert messaged me, the same guy who sat there silent at the family meeting. Said Mom had been diagnosed with early-stage cancer. Treatable. But she was asking for me. Said he knew what happened was messed up, but she's my mother, and I should call her. I stared at that message for about an hour. Sat on the edge of the bed with my phone in my hand, just reading it over and over. My gut was telling me it was a trap. That they'd use Mom's diagnosis to guilt me back into being the fixer. The reliable one. The guy who absorbs everything. I'd seen this play before. Different crisis, same script. Call Grant, he'll figure it out. But she had cancer. And no matter how much I'd buried it, she was still my mom. She was still the woman who worked 2 jobs to keep us fed. Who sat with me at the kitchen table helping me with college applications, even though she was exhausted. That version of her still existed in my head, even if the real version had let me down. So I called my uncle and asked how bad it was. Stage 1. Caught early. Surgery, then radiation. She was going to be fine. I asked if Mom actually asked him to reach out. He paused, then admitted Michelle set it up. Of course she did. My sister was pulling strings again, using Mom's diagnosis as bait. I told him to tell Mom I hope her treatment goes well, but I'm not coming back. Hung up. Felt like garbage for about 3 days. Couldn't focus at work. Couldn't eat right. Just walked around with this weight on my chest that wouldn't go away. Audrey held me while I cried for the first time since I left. We were sitting on the couch. Some baseball game was on in the background. Nobody was watching. And I just completely lost it. Everything I'd been stuffing down for over a year came out at once. She didn't say anything. Just held on and let me get through it. Mom's treatment went fine. I know because Michelle posted about it online. Pictures from the hospital. Captions about family rallying together. Not one mention of the son who wasn't there. Didn't expect there to be. About 18 months after I left, I got an email from Rachel. Long apology. The kind that's clearly been rewritten a bunch of times. Said she and Kyle had been done for months. Called the whole thing a mistake. Said she threw away the best thing that ever happened to her for someone who couldn't even commit. That Kyle turned out to be exactly who I always told her he was. Unreliable, immature, unable to follow through on anything. She said the affair started because she was lonely, and Kyle was there, and she made the worst decision of her life. Wasn't asking for another chance. Just wanted me to know she knew what she lost, and that she hoped I was doing okay. I read it twice, sat with it for about 10 minutes, then deleted it, blocked her email. That apology wasn't for me. It was for her. So she could feel like she did the right thing by saying sorry and move on with a clear conscience. And that part about Kyle being unreliable, she didn't figure that out during the 6 months she was sleeping with him in my guest bedroom. She needed 18 more months to come to that conclusion. She can find closure somewhere else. 2 years after I moved, I proposed to Audrey. Took her to this overlook point we'd hiked to early in our relationship. We'd been there on our third date, and she'd said something about how the view made everything else feel small. I remembered that. Carried the ring in my jacket pocket for 3 weeks, waiting for the right moment. Almost did it at a gas station once because she was standing in the parking lot laughing at something on her phone, and the light was hitting her face, and I just thought, yeah, this is the person. But I waited. Wanted it to be right. The day I actually did it, I was so nervous I almost tripped on the trail going up. She asked if I was okay, and I said yeah, just watching my step. Which was technically true. Got to the top, and she was looking out at the view, and I just did it. No big speech. Just said I want to spend the rest of my life with you. She said yes before I even finished asking. Grabbed my face with both hands and said, yes. Obviously yes. Are you kidding me right now? We just stood there holding each other while some random hiker walked past and gave us a thumbs up. Neither of us cared. Could have been standing in a parking lot for all it mattered. I remember my hands were shaking the same way they shook in that parking lot the night I found out. But for the opposite reason. Got married 6 months later. Small ceremony. Real friends. Her family who'd welcomed me from day one. Her parents. Her sisters. Her grandmother who kept calling me the good one, even though she'd never met anyone from my old life. That woman just decided I was good, and that was that. It rained that morning, but cleared right before the ceremony, and Audrey goes, see, even the weather's on our side. Her sister rolled her eyes, but she was crying and smiling at the same time. After the ceremony, her dad shook my hand and said, welcome to the family, son. I had to look away for a second because that one sentence from a man I'd known for 18 months hit harder than anything my own family had ever said to me in 30 years. Nobody from my old life was invited. Nobody from my old life even knew I got married. 3 years out now. Got promoted twice. Audrey and I bought a house. Little 3-bedroom with a yard that needs work. We spent the first weekend pulling weeds, and she kept finding these random garden gnomes the previous owner had buried in the flower beds for some reason. We found 4 of them. She lined them up on the porch and named all of them. That's who I married. Had a daughter, Nora. She's got Audrey's laugh and my stubbornness, and she's definitely the best thing that's ever happened to me. She just started walking, and every day she figures out some new thing she can get into. Last week, she pulled every single book off the bottom shelf and just sat in the pile looking proud of herself. Audrey took a picture. Life is actually full now. For real full. Not the fake full where you're busy all the time because everyone needs something from you. Rachel's apology came after Kyle flopped. Not after the betrayal. Not after the family meeting. After the gamble didn't pay off. That's not remorse. That's buyer's regret. And Audrey's dad saying, welcome to the family, son. 5 words from a man he'd known 18 months that meant more than 30 years with his own blood. That says everything. Let's get into the final update. Final update. Got a call from an unknown number. Almost didn't pick up. Normally, I don't answer numbers I don't recognize. Learned that lesson the hard way when a cousin tried to reach me through a coworker's phone once. But something made me answer this one. It was Michelle. She'd been trying to reach me for months, apparently. Said we needed to talk about Kyle. I told her I don't have a brother. She told me Kyle was in a facility, that he'd been struggling ever since I left. Lost his job, got into some bad stuff, pushed everyone away, tried to hurt himself last month. I'm not going to pretend that didn't hit me. I sat down at the kitchen table and just stared at the counter for a while. Whatever he did, he's still the kid I used to pick up from school. The kid I taught to ride a bike in the driveway while mom watched from the porch. The kid who used to fall asleep on my shoulder, watching movies on the couch. I used to carry him to bed when he was too small to wake up. But that version of Kyle doesn't exist anymore. The real Kyle made choices that killed that person just as much as they killed our relationship. I asked if he was alive. She said yes, he's getting help, but he keeps asking for me. Says he can't move forward until he makes things right. She started begging. Said she knows what he did was awful and they all messed up. But he's our brother and he needs me. I told her he stopped being my brother when he chose to betray me. She tried the he was young and stupid angle. He was 26, I was 28. We were both grown men making grown decisions. And every single person in that family chose him over me. Every one of them. Then I said what I'd been thinking for 3 years. This isn't really about Kyle struggling, is it, Michelle? It's about the fact that you all made the wrong choice. And now you have to live with it. Hung up. Audrey was across the room. Nora was asleep in her arms with her little fist wrapped around the collar of Audrey's shirt the way she always does when she's fighting sleep. Audrey asked what that was about. I told her everything. She shifted Nora to one arm and hugged me with the other. A month later, I got an email from Mom. Longest thing she'd ever written to me. Probably took her hours. Said she knows she wasn't fair to me. That choosing Kyle over me was wrong. That she should have stood up in that living room and told Kyle he was wrong instead of asking me to forgive him. Said she replays that family meeting in her head all the time, and she hates herself for what she did. That she chose the easy son to side with because Kyle was always the one who needed more. And she knows that's not an excuse. She's sorry. Doesn't expect me to come back. Just needed me to know she knows she failed me. Said she hopes someday I'll let her meet her granddaughter. That email messed me up for a few days. Not going to lie. Because part of me had been waiting 3 years to hear those exact words. Part of me wanted to call her right then and pretend none of it happened. Go back to Sunday dinners and holiday stuff and being her son again. But the other part, the part that spent 3 years rebuilding from nothing, knew that going back wouldn't be going home. It would be going backward. And I didn't come this far to go backwards. I showed it to Audrey. She read it twice and then looked at me for a while. She said, I think she's 3 years too late, but it's your call. I sat on it for a week, reread it probably 10 times, kept opening it on my phone during lunch breaks at work and then closing it again. Then one night after Nora was asleep, I sat at the kitchen table and wrote back. Told her I appreciate the apology, but it doesn't undo the damage. She chose Kyle. She made me feel crazy for being hurt and let everyone else do the same. I have a family now, a real one. Hope Kyle gets the help he needs. Hope she's healthy, but I'm not coming back. She wrote back, I understand. I love you. I didn't respond. Last week I got a text from Kyle's number. Said he's sober, 6 months clean, working through a lot. Knows what he did was unforgivable, but needed to say it anyway. Said he destroyed my life because he was selfish and weak. Took advantage of my kindness and threw it away for someone who didn't even matter in the end. Said I was the best brother anyone could ask for, and he repaid me by sleeping with my fiancée in my house while I planned a wedding. No excuse. Doesn't expect a response. Just needed me to know he knows what he did. I read it again. Sat in the garage for a while with the door open. Could hear Nora inside laughing at something. Audrey was in the kitchen. I could smell whatever she was making through the door. Showed Audrey the text when I came back in. She read it standing at the counter with a towel over her shoulder. Asked if I was going to respond. I thought about it. Really did. Kyle sounded genuine. He'd clearly done some real work on himself. Part of me wanted to believe people could change. That my little brother was still in there somewhere. But then I thought about that family meeting. About watching him cry while everyone comforted him and nobody looked at me. About my mom going to him after I walked out. About walking into my own bedroom. About the 6 months. About Nora's laugh. About Audrey's hand in mine. About those 4 garden gnomes on the porch of a house I bought with a woman who chose me without me having to earn it every single day. I deleted the message. Audrey kissed my forehead and said, I'm proud of you. Then Nora came running into the room yelling, Daddy, play with me. I scooped her up. She giggled. Audrey smiled. Yesterday somebody tagged me on Facebook. Michelle. A family photo. Mom, Michelle, Kyle, some cousins. They were at some barbecue or something. Everyone smiling. Kyle looked thinner than I remembered. Caption read, Family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's the people who show up. I untagged myself, blocked Michelle, closed my phone, and went outside where Audrey was sitting on the porch with Nora on her lap, pointing at a bird in the yard. Went back to my life. I think about the porch sometimes. The weekend we stained it. How normal everything was. The pizza. The wedding talk. Him practicing his best man toast out loud and messing up the same line over and over until we were both cracking up. I wonder if he thinks about that day too. I don't know. And I've stopped needing to know. And that's where Grant leaves it. 3 years later, wife, daughter, house, career. Built from nothing after his brother and his fiancée burned his old life down, and his entire family told him he was the problem for being upset about it. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Should he have responded to Kyle's message? Was ignoring his mom's cancer the right call? Hit subscribe and give the video a like if you enjoyed this one. This has been Fyra. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.